introduce Senator Rand Paul. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. We've been holding meetings like this around Kentucky. We've had similar meetings over in Louisville with the Louisville mayor, chief of police. We've done the same this morning. I was excited to learn that Lexington's homicide rate has gone down dramatically this year, to learn about some of the programs the mayor has instituted, and the council has instituted, the chief of police, and the things that are working. I think sometimes when we think about gun violence, we get polarized. Republicans are here, Democrats are here, and nothing's happening because we disagree. And there is some truth to that. There are definitely disagreements on how we move forward, but I think there are also some things that we could do that we could all agree on. And one of the things I've presented today for consideration is that about 100,000 people try to buy guns each year who are felons. These are people who have already committed a crime, and it's against the law for them to buy guns because they're already felons. Of the 100,000 people who try to buy guns who are felons, I think we prosecuted 12 out of 100,000. So I think there is the possibility that we could do better. We can't hardly do much worse. And one way of doing that, you have to always try to find resources. This is a federal issue, but it intersects with the local, would be to try to find money. We have a $1.2 billion fund for Afghanistan reconstruction. I don't know about everybody else, but I'm kind of tired of sending our money overseas, and I think we could spend some of that money here, hire some more U.S. attorneys, and actually prosecute some of the felons who are trying to buy guns and maybe prevent some crime from happening. But I think it's not just about punishment. We also talked about community organizers. We had a couple community organizers with us this morning telling us about trying to reach these kids as they're having disputes in schools and trying to figure out ways to stop the disputes from elevating, trying to get to some of those who have not yet become hardened into criminal ways and try to give them another alternative. But I thought the conversation was useful. Most of the people in the room, they see it up, they walk these streets, they see it up close, but there is an intersection between state, local, and federal. And I think that too often we're seen as sort of everybody butting heads. I got to have this, you got to have that, and that there is no in between. And I think with this that involves all of us, there is some cooperation that we can find. And I appreciate the mayor taking time, and chief of police, and those who came together today. And we'd be happy to take a few questions if that's okay with the mayor.
Certainly. Are there any questions from the media?
For his support for Israel and Ukraine and sending that money overseas. What are your thoughts on the AIPAC? Back to you.
I think there's a finite amount of money, and so right now we borrow about $1.5 trillion. I'm guessing the mayor, what do you spend what comes in, right?
We do, and we balance our budget.
Exactly, and so this is my big complaint about this, is that cities, counties, and states, by and large, spend what comes in. So if the mayor has a street that needs repaired and there are 10 streets repaired, they will have to rank them if they don't have enough money for all 10. They might fix 9 out of 10, but the mayor and the council have to figure these things out. In Washington, they just add on to the borrowing, and it's getting so big that I don't think we can do it. So Massey and myself supported aid to Israel if it was taken from somewhere else in the budget, but we didn't support borrowing it. I think that's just a fiscally responsible position.
Senator Paul, you're somebody who kind of rails against the Washington establishment and sort of takes on the liberty mantle a little bit. We have a lot of state legislative candidates that kind of take that mantle on as well, liberty Republicans. I'm wondering if you see any parallels between yourself and that group of state Republicans.
I think every party, Democrat or Republican, always has battles and factions within it. I'm just someone who's from the fiscally conservative part of my party. That doesn't mean I don't always agree with all Republicans, but we don't always agree on every issue. But I think it's important because I think it weakens us as a country to keep borrowing so much money. This year we're going to spend over $800 billion in interest. Interest doesn't buy any new roads. Interest doesn't buy anything. In fact, it sort of is pushing out spending towards things that we could actually be usefully doing it for. So I am of the wing that thinks, and that some of that could be called the Liberty wing, that we don't have the money to spend, and so we have to be more frugal. I think the problem is much worse at the federal level, because no matter what you think, either for the city, county, or state, they are living within limitations, which is good. It makes them better people, and it makes them more responsible because they don't have the choice. Now, there's probably some borrowing. You probably have some bonds that you borrow for cities, or, I mean, for big buildings or schools, and that's a reasonable thing. But in Washington, we're borrowing to pay the rent. We're borrowing to give you your Social Security check. We're borrowing to pay for your Medicare, your Medicaid, your food stamps. We are borrowing for everything, and it's not really the best way to run a government. Maybe one or two more.
Senator Paul, what are your thoughts on the Safer Kentucky Act that was passed this year? You're talking about crime. What's your assessment on Lexington's situation, and then what are your thoughts on the Safer Kentucky Act?
My understanding from hearing, we'll let the mayor respond also, is that crime's gone quite a bit down as far as homicides in Fayette County, so something is going on that's good. And whether it's a temporary thing or a permanent thing, we'll see over time, but that's a good sign. What I know about the act, and I don't know all the details, it was a pretty big act, but the one aspect of the act that I advocated for, the SAFER Act, was the idea that if you attempt to kill someone, but you don't hit them with the bullets, that it should be considered to be a violent crime, not a nonviolent crime. The reason this came to my attention was Mayor Greenberg, when he was running as a candidate, there was an attempted assassination. They say if you look at the wall behind him, you can see a silhouette of bullets all around the shape of where he was standing. And one bullet went through his sweater, but he wasn't hit. I learned from the newspaper that they said if the person is convicted and gets 10 years in prison, they'll only have to serve 20% of the time because it's considered to be nonviolent because they didn't hit him. If they would have shot him and actually hit him and wounded him, then it would be a violent crime that would get 85%. They'd have to serve 85% of their time. So the SAFER Act did change that. So now if there's an attempted murder, but the person wasn't wounded, but shots were fired at them, that attempted murder will be treated as a violent crime. Now, that may not seem like a big thing, but I'm hoping that will keep some violent people away from the rest of us for a longer period of time. Did you want to comment on the SAFER Act or any of the crime
No, I
acts?
think you
Okay.
covered it.
All right.
You kind of touched on youth gun violence earlier. I mean, are there any plans in action to kind of curb this issue? We just had a homicide recently involving 2 teens, so we're talking more about those plans there.
The one thing, everything is incremental. One of the things that we're going to do is I'm going to introduce legislation in Washington to get resources from the Afghan Reconstruction Fund and put it into a fund for U.S. attorneys to prosecute felons who are trying to buy guns. So right now, if you're a felon and you try to buy a gun, we don't prosecute it because we don't have the resources. And so because we don't, that would add to your sentence, but that would also keep you away from guns for a longer period of time. And you think, who are the highest risk people to shoot somebody? Somebody who's already committed a crime with a gun and now they're trying to buy a gun again. I would think that we should throw the book at them and really prosecute those people, because really when you think about it, like the crime in Fayette County is committed by less than 1% of the people. 99% of the people are doing just fine and staying out of the, not committing violence against their neighbors. About 1%, it's a really small number. But those are the people we need to try to rehabilitate who we can, try to prevent violence on some of them. But those who are committing the violence, we also need to separate them from us. I'm hoping that this bill will do that. The other thing we discussed upstairs is there was a move in the state legislature to make it a felony to shoot into a home. And we have disagreements on guns. Republicans and Democrats, even Republicans, we don't all agree on what to do about guns, but I think we should punish people using guns in a violent way. So shooting into a house, I think, should be a felony. What would that do? It may put them in jail, but it also would take away their gun rights. And as much as I'm for gun rights, I'm not for gun rights if you're shooting into someone's house or if you shoot somebody. So I think it's a way of trying to address the issue of guns, but by trying to be more severe on how we punish people using guns in crime. Maybe one more?
Senator Paul, you recently introduced legislation.
Who are you with again?
Bluegrass Live, San Marcos. You introduced legislation in the local news and broadcast for the Restoration Act. I was wondering if that has anything to do with Paxton Media and whether you would talk about comments.
This is the new bill that we just introduced. So it used to be people worried about the newspaper being a monopoly or the local television station being a monopoly. So in the 1930s and 40s, they put all these rules to try to prevent them from getting too big. Now, if you compare your local television or newspaper to Facebook, Facebook's a $1 trillion corporation, or virtually a $1 trillion corporation. Your local newspaper might be worth 10 million. And so the leverage and all the reporting and content that your local newspaper does, they have to pay people like you to get the reporting, to get the content. They think that big tech is sort of taking that content without adequately reimbursing the newspapers. So what we're trying to do is let the newspapers and television organize. Collective bargaining, there's nothing wrong with collective bargaining. It means when the smaller players organize, they have enough leverage to use it against bigger players. So Facebook is enormous. Lexington newspaper, Lexington television are small in comparison. But if you were able to work together collectively to bargain with Facebook, you'd get a better price for your content. They wouldn't be able to take your content as easily as they do now. And it also would remove some caps. Back in the 30s and 40s, they said you can't have more than a certain amount of television stations. Well, now television compared to Facebook or Google or anything, they're this big. And so we really should allow them to grow to be bigger, because their size and being bigger is going to give them more leverage to compete against someone who's even bigger, which is our big tech companies. Thank you all for coming.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Senator Paul, and thank you all for coming.